Hello, everyone. I'm Captain Logan, and welcome to another special live show. Tonight, I've got a couple of guys I like a lot from a podcast about Sega Genesis games called the Genesis Gems. With us this evening are the two most prominent of the Genesis Gems, the founder and kind of main host, Nick.
What's up?
Nick Stevens and Aaron Hickman.
Hey, how's it going, guys? You can hardly see my face, but that's okay.
Guys, we're gonna talk like, yeah, Nick's actually a space alien. He has no face, so he hides behind a microphone so that it looks like there might be a face there, but there's actually no face there.
This is true.
Or at least he has eyeballs, but like no mouth. There's actually no. He doesn't want to scare you though by not showing a mouth. He's actually he's actually podcasting with his mind telepathically.
I'm good at that stuff.
So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about Nick and Aaron's podcast. They're going to tell you about their really cool show, and we're going to just talk Sega for an hour. If we get some folks chatting with us live, we'll answer some questions for you a little bit later at the end of the show. So feel free to start throwing those in now, because we've got a small enough group. I don't think the chat is going to start blowing up and scrolling too much. If that ends up happening, I'll ask you to dial it back a little bit. But right now, it looks like there's just a couple people in the comments. I see John. I see Jeffrey. Thanks for being here, guys. Let's go ahead and jump right into it and let these guys talk a little bit about themselves. Nick, how long have you guys been doing the show? I've been listening to you for about a year, and I think about half your shows were there they're close to half, or maybe a little bit over half, because you were posting maybe like 2 or 3 times a month, and now it's dialed back to about once a month.
Yeah, so we kind of started the show twice. It actually was originated by Rob Luther. So if you all follow the show at all, Rob was kind of the originator of the show. He invited me and another gentleman named Derek Slayton on.
Is that what it was? I thought you invited Rob. I didn't realize that.
No, this was all Rob's idea. He came up with the name, because Rob's just a creative guy anyways, but he came up with the name. We did about... Yeah. Oh, he's great. He's great. Miss that guy a lot. He doesn't come on as regularly as he used to, but we did about 4 or 5 episodes, and we took a hiatus. And then we came back, did about 2 or 3 episodes, took another hiatus, and I kind of just asked him, Rob, we got a pretty big following at the time. It's much bigger now. And I said, do you care if I just kind of take the reins on this? And so for a while, I just kind of did a guest spot. So I had like Michael Kelso on from Two Dudes in a Nest and a few other guys from our network. And then I finally got the podcast with Aaron. Yeah. I'm like, man, I really like this guy, Aaron. He's pretty cool. So I actually went to Rob and I said, hey, do you care if I ask Aaron to be kind of the main co-host with me? Of course, Rob was fully on board with that. So Aaron and I just kind of ran with it. I think, do you remember what episode that was, Aaron? I think it's a Gunstar Heroes movie.
So I guessed it first when we did X Mutants, and then later on, I want to say it was Gunstar Heroes is when I became a regular.
Yeah, and ever since we've just been the dynamic duo. and Landon Long comes on sometimes. Joshua Witt, Rob's always welcome on. So if you go to our website at genesisgemspodcast.com, you'll see all those hosts. But it's mainly Aaron and I. We carry about 80% of the show, I'd say. Landon was on the last one with us, and we try to do 2 shows a month and then 1 Patreon show a month. Patreon.com/GenesisGems for you guys that want to go in there and check that out. But definitely appreciate you having us on here. It's kind of a short history of that. There's actually another little history on our webpage if you want to go check that out, how Rob and I started the show with our friend Derek, and then how Aaron came on as well. So but it's kind of our
Nick, you guys are super friendly and personable, and I just thought this would be a really good time. And one of the things I love about you guys is that you're family friendly. That's the thing I've always tried to do, and I don't find a lot of people, especially in the YouTube sphere, I don't find a lot of people that do that. But even in podcasts, there's not a whole lot of that. And when you're talking about something like old school video games, I'm not saying it's bad to be more adult about that, because the majority of us that are going to listen to a thing like that are certainly older. But at the same time, a lot of us have kids that want to learn about this stuff, and I know my 7-year-old is really into old 8 and 16-bit stuff, and he goes on Wikipedia and he tries to learn everything he can. And so shows like you guys I can listen to with him, and he learns all this minutia, especially from Aaron, the master of minutia. He just learns all this stuff, and it's really nice to be able to have that. But no, it feels like I'm hanging out with a couple of friends every time I listen to your show.
Cool.
And I think really appreciate it, yeah.
And I think, I'm sure I don't want to speak for Aaron. That's kind of what we've always been going for this show. I always listen to the podcast. I know we started Gems probably back in 2013, And I just wanted something fun to do. I wanted to be approachable. The amount of friends we've made from this show, Aaron, I'm sure you're the same way. I've got like 70 or 80 friends on my Facebook list that are just from the podcast, people that I've gotten to know, people who listen to the show. And I've actually met some of them in person, which I always thought was kind of weird. I'm like, this is strange.
I actually ended up staying at a listener's house for a week.
That's
he
awesome.
had a game-a-thon, a 24-hour game-a-thon for his birthday.
That was Eric, wasn't it? Eric Purcell?
Yeah, Eric Purcell.
Shout out, Eric.
Good friend of the show. Yeah, I ended up hanging out with him in Iowa with his family, and we had a great time. It's amazing some of the people you meet through podcasting or through YouTube shows.
Oh yeah, and I mean I've been doing this for so long now that a lot of my best friends are people that I met doing this. Either people who listened to us and I got to know them, or people that I worked with. And as I told you guys earlier, the guy who's the main co-host on my channel now, Eric, I met through doing this, and he lives in my house now.
That's awesome.
I had to drive 20 hours one direction to Florida to get him to bring him here to live with me. So you guys are a part of the Retro Junkies network. Is there a bunch of other stuff on that? What is Retro Junkies?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So Retro Junkies was actually started by Rob and Landon. They started a podcast probably 2012, something like that, just called the Retro Junkies. And I met them through the original podcast I started. It's not on anymore. If you go to Patreon, you can see some of the stuff. We call it the 90s Entertainment Show, NES podcast. And I was listening to Rob's podcast. I kind of reached out to him because, again, he was one of those real personable guys that he just seems like a nice guy. Maybe I can chat with him. And Rob immediately picked up our podcast, kind of promoted it. And from there, we started the Retro Junkies Network, brought on all kinds of other podcasts. And there, Aaron's original podcast, Retro Obscura, was on there.
Yeah, and then
that's
I'm a musician also. And so I wrote some theme songs for people in the network.
Yeah. So it just kind of exploded from there. The network's not as tight-knit, kind of tight as it used to be, but we all still help promote each other's podcast. And the retrojunkies.com is kind of our main website. It has, if you just click on the podcast link, you can see all the other podcasts. There's Sega Master System. Ferg does one, 2600, which Robert Ferguson's one of the big influences for our whole Game by Game podcast. He kind of started that with the Atari 2600 Game by Game. So everyone's been kind of copying him in our network. But yeah, there's a great community there. I know we have a fake rivalry with Two Dudes in an S. Actually, it's real. Don't tell anybody. We met those guys there, Michael Kelso and Justin. Great guys. Don't tell anyone I said that either.
The faux animosity is really fun. And then the nice thing is, if they ever irritate you, you can couch it in faux animosity. You can just pretend like you're mad, even if you actually are.
Yeah, we have a good time with those guys.
Make fun of the accent and play that up.
You do a good impression of Michael.
Hey, Justin. Yeah.
What's up, man?
So of course, naturally, other people in your network are going to want to jump onto a system that you haven't gone game by game yet. Are you guys do you think it's realistic? Are you hoping to tackle everything, or are there things that you've already kind of written off as we're never going to get to that for whatever reason?
Yeah, I don't think we're ever going to take like a game.com podcast. I don't think that'll ever happen. What do you think, Aaron?
Oh yeah.
Well, no, I just mean for Genesis.
Like, do you think we'll ever reach the end of our list of games to cover?
True.
Yeah, I guess what I meant was just jumping on from that like when you said a minute ago, like I guess we've all ripped him off and copied him. Like, but naturally you're going to want to go to other systems and do game by game.
Oh yeah, so that's quite kind of our outlet is because we have a Patreon. We're able to explore other Sega systems besides the Sega Genesis. And that's kind of our outlet because Nick and I love stuff like the Sega Saturn and the Sega Dreamcast and all the stuff that Sega's kind of put out, published, or developed in the meantime since they became a developer full-time. So I think there's just this huge avenue. And if we ever go to YouTube, we can start pushing even more content that might reach outside of the boundaries of the Sega Genesis. But I think the main podcast we're doing will continue to be Sega Genesis.
Yeah, do you think you'll ever hit every game? Or are there things that you're already like, we're never going to do that? It's not going to happen.
There's a little over 700 U.S. release games, so I don't think that'll happen anytime soon.
Episode 68.
Grandparents by then.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's why I said it's probably not realistic, but I felt the need to ask the question because of the relatively obscure things you've already hit. There's some things where it's like, if we're doing Barney hide and seek, maybe we are going to try to do every single game there is.
that's kind of the bottom of the Barney barrel there. There's a lot of there's a lot of terrible games that we still have to cover. But, I mean, there's Adventures of Mighty Max. We did cover Heavy Nova, which is worst fighting game on the system, bar none.
Slaughter Sport was there too, right?
Yeah, just janky. It was before everyone realized that the perfect formula was, Street Fighter 2. So everyone was still kind of stuck in they were stuck in the 80s with the Karate Champ design and just the really
Urban Champion.
Yeah, just kind of janky controls, and
yeah,
you didn't have the fluid movements yet.
Yeah, and I think something Aaron and I try to do whenever it's we try to get the listeners involved, and of course they want us to play the games they love, but we usually try to pick just bad games on purpose because we don't want to play all the great games at first and then just have this awful relay.
But there's plenty of like mediocre, middle of the road stuff you can do, but then a lot of that stuff is because it's mediocre. It's not gonna be that interesting to talk about.
It's like when you talk about movies, and there's the bad movies that are really fun to talk about because they're so horrible that you wonder how they even got made.
Yeah.
And then there's the ones that kind of sit in the middle, or like a lot of superhero movies that you talk about where it's just like, you can tell.
Don't I know it?
There's effort put into it, but it's not even fun to talk about. So you really have to put a lot of effort into that episode to sell it to people.
Yeah.
Because they can kind of hear in your voice that you're really not feeling this game, and it's just good enough to where it's okay. And there's some solid points to it, but there's just mediocrity written all over it.
And that's why we do the segments like Ask Aaron and the stupid dad jokes I tell, things like that, to kind of give, even if the game's awful and we're not really enjoying talking about it, we have all these other real cool segments that kind of bring the listeners in. It's amazing the people who have contacted me personally. It's like, I really wish you would give the Ask Aaron a deadline so I know exactly when to do. I mean, they're passionate about that, and I love it. And I remember when there's 2 or 3 episodes where I stopped saying dad jokes, and people actually called me out on that. And I'm like, really, people like this stuff? Kind of the dad jokes kind of a thing. Today is President's Day, right?
Yeah. I took off for my kids.
Did you guys know what George Washington called his false teeth? They're presidentures.
Speaking of Nick, I have a dad joke for you.
Oh, I can't wait.
And not only do I have a dad joke, but it's also dentistry related.
Wait, Nick, are you anti-dentite?
Nick, when is it time to go to the dentist?
2:30.
2:30. Yes, I figured you had probably heard that one. See, what's the best thing with a bad dad joke is when somebody who's used to telling them already knows the punchline.
My favorite, someone got me good today at work. We were talking about eating Subway, and he was like, "Hey, on February 30th, they're having this half off sub deal." And I was going with it. I'm like, "Oh yeah, there's a coupon for that?" Then I started thinking, "Oh, February 30th, that doesn't exist."
Every 4 years, there's a February 29th, though.
That's true.
Every time somebody says something about that, I'm reminded of that Simpsons episode with Smarch.
Yeah, I remember that.
And Homer's like, I hate this horrible Smarch weather. So you guys both grew up with, if memory serves, Sega and Nintendo. You guys both did the Super Nintendo thing also. And you guys kind of like to play up Sega's better than Nintendo, but I think that's mostly just because that's the show you're doing. Right. What was the main reason you guys decided to focus on Sega on your podcast as opposed to a different system or a different company?
Well, I think for me, it was more of I just met this cool Rob Luther guy, and he asked me to be on his podcast. So absolutely, I'll come talk Sega. So no, I mean, honestly, when he asked me that, I do have a passion for Sega. I love the Genesis. I think it was one of those systems that I didn't have the most appreciation for when it came out. I mentioned a lot in the podcast. I didn't get it until like the mid '90s. I didn't quite get it when it came out, and I had to catch up on that, and I loved catching up on it. It was such a good time in my life. And when Rob asked me to be on the show, I'm like, heck yeah, I want to talk Genesis. It just kind of clicked. And like you mentioned, I'm not I would call myself a Sega fanboy, but I like Nintendo too. I've had every Nintendo system. I've had every Sega system. But as far as the 16-bit era goes, I always gravitated more towards the Genesis because I'm more into arcade games. I'm more into sports games. I'm more into the, just beat 'em up games, action games, brawler games, and the Sega had that. And I do love RPGs. Don't get me wrong. I love my Zelda and my Final Fantasies and things. But something about that arcade feel and just brought back so many memories to me as a kid. So whenever I got asked to be on a Genesis podcast, I'm like, heck yeah, put me right on there.
And I guess for me, one thing I think about with the Sega Genesis is history kind of thinks of the Super Nintendo as the winner. Or a lot of people think about the Super Nintendo as the winner, and I kind of like to root for the underdog. I personally grew up with both systems. We weren't rich by any means, but I had older siblings that worked, and one who worked for Hollywood Video as a manager. So we got to try out every game pretty much. He would bring it home, and we would try it out. So it was great. It was fantastic. So we had the NES, we had the Sega Genesis, the Super Nintendo, but I'm kind of with Nick. I love the arcade ports. I thought those were super solid. Yep. I love the quality of the music. While the Super Nintendo was great with orchestral music, with the Sega Genesis, you had like this really gritty, dirty sound.
Dying cat sound.
It was grungy, yeah. You've got those games that sound better on Genesis than Super Nintendo, and those are kind of few and far between, but they're all rock soundtracks, right? Like,
for a lot of rock soundtracks, less on the orchestral side. There's a few that did that. But yeah, stuff like Streets of Rage 2 especially had like the high energy club dance, early 90s dance feel to it. It was just phenomenal soundtrack that you
Maximum Carnage with Green Jelly sounds way better on Genesis than it does on Super Nintendo.
Yes, it's a lot crunchier. Yeah.
Have you guys ever gone and listened to that actual like band track, the Carnage Rules track?
Yep, absolutely. I'm a huge Tool fan, so Danny Carey being part of that whole.
I'm glad you finished that.
Oh, I forgot that's who that was. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, you thought I was. Let's see where you're going with that, Aaron. Tool fan. I'm a huge Tool fan. Yeah, Danny Carey is like one of my favorite drummers of all time. So knowing that he was even part of that, and I was gravitated completely towards that. Yeah, Tool's actually gonna be in Columbus, Ohio soon. I want to go watch him.
So wait, with Green Jelly, didn't they purport to have one member who was like in their 70s or something?
Really?
Yes.
That's hilarious.
And I forgot because they were all using aliases and stuff like that. But they
remember the Three Little Pigs song?
Right?
You guys remember the Three Little Pigs song?
And it was crazy because you think of like the mid 90s where in Maximum Carnage, which was a Spider-Man game. And that really got me more into Spider-Man than I'd ever been because you were going up against Carnage and you got to play Spider-Man and Venom and
even being the big superhero fan I am, I was a Batman Superman kid all growing up. It wasn't until that game that I knew anything about Spider-Man at all.
Yeah, and I remember that same time, mid 90s. I actually started collecting the Venom comics. I mean, I had the very first issue of the Venom comic. I had like this red, like shiny cover, and I had like the first 10 comic books of that. And right then I thought, man, Venom's my favorite character in the Marvel universe at this time. And of course, I was completely let down when Topher Grace got to play him, and very excited about the Tom Hardy rendition. We'll see how that goes.
I am too. That teaser is preposterous. It might be a great movie, but I don't know what they were thinking. They didn't have enough ready to make that teaser. We're lucky that there's a jar of goo, or it wouldn't look like Venom anything. There's a spaceship. That's about all. Yeah, Nick, the comics you're talking about were during the miniseries period with Venom before he ever had a monthly, and there's some okay fun art in that. If you go back to the stories, they're all terrible, but they're really entertaining. That's a Lethal Protector and all that stuff. Yeah.
I can't even remember the stories. I just remember like loving the artwork of it. But
we've reviewed some of that. It's hilarious.
Oh, cool. Yeah, just from the video game, I thought, man, Venom is a cool character.
Oh yeah. And Maximum Carnage was some of the first Spider-Man comics I read too, and those don't hold up as well as I wish they did either, but they're fun. Aaron, talk a little bit about your chiptune writing. You are now believe it or not, the second person on one of these live shows that is a chiptune writer. I don't know if you were familiar with the Super Mercado Brothers at all. They also go to MagFest.
Yeah, and I missed them while I was there.
Oh, no.
I know they do a podcast and write chiptune, right?
They do, yeah. And their podcast has been going forever. They're on episode 300 and something. Oh. And I had Carl Brueggemann on from that podcast. And by the way, his and your podcasts are equal for my favorite podcasts. So I listen to both of you guys all the time. And was really gracious to come on and talk with us too, and of course he had a lot of really interesting things to say about video game music and chiptune writing. And I just wanted to ask you, Aaron, what is your favorite like sound to play with? Is it the Genesis chip or stuff that sounds like that, or do you like to blend kind of a lot of things together?
I've kind of gone back and forth, because I will tell you, a couple years ago, I was on this chiptune compilation called Chiptunes Equals Win Volume 5, which was a competition basically, and a whole bunch of people will submit, and they select about 50 something odd submissions, and I kind of wanted to stand out, so I blended several chips together. I did Commodore 64 and TurboGrafx 16, and I kind of mixed these two chips that are completely different together to make a track. So it kind of just depends on what mood I'm in. I will be honest, the last, I think, 3 or 4 things I've made have been Sega Genesis, and I love the FM sound, and I think it's a shame that so many composers who composed for the Sega Genesis really didn't know how to take full advantage of it. And part of it was poor documentation on Sega's part. And part of it was that a lot of them it was kind of the path of least resistance. They used a tool that they could take their MIDI data and just throw it into the program and use the most default boring sounds and pump out a soundtrack. And that's what you got with Gems most of the time, which was the software. Now, there was sometimes where people would make stuff like Comic Zone or Toe Jam and Earl, where they used the most default, program, and it was great. So, to answer your question, yeah, I love FM. I've done NES stuff before. I just love chiptune in general. I love utilizing old hardware to create soundscapes and bring people back to a time in their childhood, and sometimes to push a chip beyond what you might think it'd be capable of doing.
I want to plug your music. I haven't heard a ton of it yet, but I listened to that piece that that you played just before MagFest, and I thought it was really great. And I'm hoping to go to MagFest this next year. That's my plan right now. I'm gonna save up and try to go. My son Jason listens to the Marcato Brothers. He listens to you guys with me, and he really wants to come meet you guys. So that's my hope.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely trying to go to MagFest every year if I can. I guess I'm just assuming you'll be there again, but I'm hoping you go again, and I'm hoping I can go the next time you go. Yeah, I played live there actually. This time, and I got to play some of my holding up here's a cart I played a tune of mine off of, a special cart, and played at Chip Space and volunteered there. I was the MC.
Yeah,
most of the time there, and
what was that like?
Money for what was that?
What was that like?
Oh, being the MC, man, I lost my voice like so bad, and they kept on having to bring me water and tea and lozenges, and but I barreled through it. Even though I had no voice, it was amazing because you meet so many people, and sometimes you'll talk to people that just like with anything, you talk to them online, and you've heard some of their stuff, and then you get to actually see them perform it live. And, all sorts of stuff went wrong, but all sorts of stuff went right too, kind of that whole Tale of Two Cities thing. So
you stayed on your feet this time there, right?
Yeah. So that's a quick story I can tell you.
You got to tell that one.
Here I went to MagFest.
Did you fall off the stage?
I didn't fall off the stage. But Chip Space is basically, you've got these showcases where they showcase different chiptune artists that are kind of up and coming. And then you've also got open mic most of the time. And so the first year I went there, which is 2 years ago now, or almost, basically I went up there and I did some of my music. And I like to get into it. I'm very physical when I'm up on stage. And I just I throw my all into the music.
You know what? Now that you say that, I've heard this story. I forgot about this. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, but for people who haven't heard it,
yeah, of course.
And now I'm an animated GIF because of it.
That's a great
so basically, I'm up on stage. I'm playing. It's a Chrono Trigger remix that I was doing basically, and I'm up on stage.
It's not a Genesis game.
It's not, but you know what? The remix had Sega Genesis parts to it, so booyah!
So good.
So I'm up there, and it's going great. You know, I'm getting into it. I kind of dance around and act stupid on stage, and then there's a part where there's like a build up, right? But I didn't realize also that there was a whole bunch of wires behind me that hadn't been cleared off the stage, and so I jump up, and I don't land exactly on my feet. I land on these wires, and I just crash to the floor like hardcore. And so everyone's like, "What?" Like, "Oh no!" And so I get back up. I kind of do a 360 spin, land on the amplifier behind me.
Oh man!
And then I get back up again and just like pump my fist in the air and just keep going. That's all you can really do. So.
That's what I love about Aaron. He's such a good, cool co-host that he's like me. He can kind of laugh at his own misfortune.
I think
just a good attitude, very positive, good attitude. Love it.
Our longevity is that we can laugh at ourselves, and because I think some people are just too serious. So I think self-deprecation is great.
When you're playing on stage, do you do any keyboards or anything live, or do you pretty much just play a play button and dance around?
Yeah. So my main instrument is piano, but I didn't end up getting to bring mine this year, but a friend of mine brought his, and we did get to jam on a song we wrote together, a Sega Genesis song. And cool. So we traded keyboard solos on that song. And then
was it a cover of something, or was it something brand new?
This was something that came out last year on Chiptunes Equals Win Volume 6. And I can give you a link to that song.
Absolutely.
If you want to check it out. And it's a song called Lydia. And yeah, it's kind of like a jazz fusion piece on the Sega Genesis. And and kind of dancey and fun to listen to. I think people would really enjoy it. And we traded keyboard solos. And then for most of my set, it was basically like choreographed Aaron. Is pretty much most of me just dancing and being silly on stage, getting people into it.
You actually choreographed it?
No, not okay. There was one part where
because you can't put improv and choreograph in the same sentence. Those mean different things.
No, you're absolutely right. But there are parts of my songs where I know exactly what I want to do. So there were a few things that were pre-planned that I wanted to do, but yeah, a lot of it was improvised.
Well, guys, we're about half an hour in. I would now, if you're willing, like to run you through a gauntlet of rapid-fire questions about the Genesis.
Yes.
And these are not trivia questions, although I considered doing that. I like to do trivia, but I didn't want to do that to you the first time meeting you. So I'm going to ask you guys some rapid-fire stuff throughout the first thing that comes to mind. This is all opinion questions. And this is going to be, I guess, Ask Nick and Aaron. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Here we go. If you guys had to choose just 3 games on the Genesis to play for the rest of your life, and you couldn't buy, rent, or emulate anything else, what would they be? Go.
Okay. Nick, do you want to go first or me?
Sure, I'll go. Streets of Rage 2, Beyond Oasis, NBA Live 95.
Wow, and Sonic 2 is not in there. That's astounding.
That
That's astounding. Now, do you think so it's and you had those at the ready, as if like driving home this afternoon, you knew I would ask that question. Now my question for you is, are those just your favorite games, or do you think they have for you the most replay value?
I think it's number one, it's a good variety. NBA Live 95 is probably one of my favorite sports games of all time. I can still play a season start to finish on that. Beyond Oasis is probably my favorite RPG type game, and then Streets of Rage 2 is my favorite beat 'em up of all time. And this top 3 could change year to year. It has changed, but as of right now, those are the games I could take on the whole desert island question. That would be what I'd take with me.
What do you say, Aaron?
Ooh, this is tough, but I'm gonna go with Gunstar Heroes. My number 1 pick. I can always play that.
I thought you were going to say that, and I've never played that. I didn't know what that was before I listened to you guys.
Contra, but 20 times more insane.
Yep.
Is the way I
like
to
describe it.
It's a gym. It's a gym all the way. Kind of a rating thing. Yeah, so I go with Guns N' Heroes. I would also go with, I think, Shadowrun, because I'm a huge fan of CRPGs and in tabletop gaming, and I really felt that Shadowrun captured that essence really well. And that's another game that's kind of open world, and it involves hacking and you know, you can also, there's some GTA elements to it, I guess you would say, kind of that open world concept, but in the early 90s. Final game, I would probably say, man, breaks my heart to have to choose between these two, but I'll probably say Shining Force 2.
You're also not going to say Sonic. I'm so surprised.
And maybe it's, you know what,
Sonic 2 was the other one you were having to pick between, right?
It was Sonic 2 or this game, and as much as I love Sonic 2, I don't know that I would be able to infinitely replay it. And
that's fair. Yeah. If you had all four, if there was a compilation on the Genesis of those, right? Yeah, that might put it over the top.
Yeah, you know what? I would say so. Because my two, I would say Sonic 2 and maybe Phantasy Star 4, because I'm usually not RPGs. So those two games are probably right at the top, and then Streets of Rage 2, and I almost went with NBA Jam for some reason. That kind of surprised me because I'm not as much into sports as Nick is, but NBA Jam is right up there on my list also.
But I love that game too, and you didn't have to even like sports to like NBA Jam, right? That's just a really good arcade game.
It's just a fun game to play.
Yep.
Yeah, and it was so cartoony. Like, you're not going to learn much about basketball playing that game. Or you'll think that you get set on fire when you dunk. All right, let's move right. Like, wow, if I'd known that happened, I didn't know you turned into the Human Torch just by virtue of being a basketball player.
I think you have to score like 3 points. You get 3 possessions in a row and score on each one, right?
Yeah,
something like that, Nick.
Yeah, you had to get 3 in a row. Yeah, so like when you hit 2 in a row without the other team scoring, it's a he's heating up, and then the third one's he's on fire. But you got to do it 3 times without the other team scoring.
Yep. And I just love being able to unlock Bill Clinton.
Bill Clinton, Al Gore. Yep.
Yeah.
Did they leave that stuff in any of the remakes for those games?
I don't. You know what? I had the remake on PS3. I don't remember. I know they had a whole bunch of.
Because it would have been fun if they did an update and put modern people in.
Oh, like being able to play as Barack Obama. I know Barack.
Yeah, like Barack Obama or something. Yeah, that'd be pretty funny.
Yeah,
I was pretty sure.
Plus, he's I think they did that.
I don't know how you get the life rights for that, but
I think when they're public people, as long as it's not like slander or something, I think it's fair use because they're in the public eye so much.
Yeah, or I mean, it's always kind of sticky, right? Because you hear both things on both sides of things, but I guess that falls into parody when you have the big head thing and it's cartoony anyway. So,
it works.
So I want to do this rapid fire thing, but there's something I wanted to say earlier. So let me backtrack for a second and just say that because we were talking about why we love Sega, and I want to weigh in here on that a little bit as well, because I'm kind of on the channel a little bit for video game fans known as a Sega guy, and I think a lot of people think I didn't even grow up with Nintendo because I talk Sega up so much, because I was the only person I knew growing up that was really into Sega, and I'm the only person I've ever known like in person that had a Saturn. I don't know anybody that owns a Saturn or ever had a Saturn, and I was besides you guys, I was huge into Virtua Fighter. It was my favorite fighting game franchise. I bought a Saturn to get the arcade port for Virtua Fighter 2, and Aaron, I had the same thing you did, if I'm remembering right from a podcast from a long time ago. That didn't you say that you went directly from NES to Sega? I had the same thing.
Same, just that exact trajectory. Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? And we sold our NES to get a Sega, and then eventually got an NES again.
Yeah, we got one back. So real quick, we got a Sega Genesis partly because someone. I accidentally gave some of our NES games to someone who I thought was just looking at them, and they knocked at my window. I was like 5 or 6 years old. They knocked at the window. They're like, "Hey, can I see your games?" Yoink.
Oh no!
Kind of replenishing the games, so kind of starting over on the Sega Genesis.
I can't believe you just handed somebody your games and they walked off with them.
There you go.
I was very gullible as a kid, and I kind of thought the best of everybody. I thought, it's a neighborhood kid. I know who they are. I thought they were just gonna, hey, can I see what these look like?
And no kindness goes unpunished. That's unfortunate.
Absolutely. And I ended up finding one of those games. I visited my old hometown like 10 years later and found one of those games at the pawn shop.
The specific cartridge.
Because it had a very identifiable mark on it.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. It was our copy of Bad Dudes.
Guys, let's continue down the rabbit hole, shall we? Your personal favorite Sega console outside of Genesis. I think I know what it is, and I think you're both going to say the same thing, but we'll see if I'm right. Go ahead, Nick.
Dreamcast.
Aaron?
Yeah. I would say, oh gosh. Yeah, okay, I'll go with the Dreamcast, but can I have a second, like a runner-up?
Honorable mention?
Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
And maybe it doesn't count. Maybe this helps. Sega CD.
Yeah.
And let me lay my case for that.
Is it just certain things that were on that system?
Yeah.
It's always at arm's length. Look at that.
One of my top 5.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for Dreamcast. But for Sega CD, just real quick, Lunar and Snatcher, and heck, Night Trap. I just have this goofy nostalgia trip for that game. Every time.
A lot of people do. I never played it. I've just seen, gameplay online, and I'm like, that game is like Power Rangers. If you didn't grow up with it, there's no understanding. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, we watched a little bit of Power Rangers, but yeah, I don't have the same nostalgia that other people have for that series.
Yeah, and I know you guys looked at the channel a little bit. I do a lot of Power Rangers content. I still love it. In fact, if I may, I've got to show you guys something. I went to Planet Comic-Con yesterday, which is our big premier comic convention here in Kansas City. And whenever I go to a comic convention these days, I always get a sketch cover done. And I had a guy draw me a sketch cover for Justice League and Power Rangers, which was a crossover that came out last year. And unfortunately, I didn't think the book was very good, but it was a fun thing to put together. And I thought it would be cool to see what somebody would do with Batman and Lord Zed. I love Lord Zed. And this guy drew me this.
Oh,
Batman hitting Lord Zed in the face with a batarang. And I thought that was
detail on his head there. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, isn't it great? Yeah, he drew the shadow under the batarang hitting him in the face. It's just a sketch. Cool. That's really cool that he even thought to do that. So you guys both said Dreamcast. That's what I thought you would say. So naturally, I snailed it.
Yes,
you did. Snailed it. Yes. Snailed it.
Guys, what is the Genesis game that is most faithful to its arcade version?
Ooh, I would say Golden Axe comes pretty close. Golden Axe or maybe Ghouls and Ghosts. Those are and those came out so early. Altered Beast. No, that's 3. Yeah. But those Sega did a lot of in-house porting. Even if it was a Capcom game, they would port it over to the system, and those ones really nail it. I think Strider also.
I guess it never occurred to me even that Altered Beast was an arcade game first. See, I'm such a novice when it comes to game knowledge. I didn't even realize that.
Well, yeah, it was the launch title in 1988, right? So
yeah,
people think of it as a Sega Genesis game if you didn't see it in the arcade first. Yeah. Well, Nick, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. No, I think those are good. I always liked Space Harrier 2 on the Genesis. I thought that was a pretty good one. I don't know how close that was to the arcade version, but I remember playing the arcade version and getting the Genesis version and thinking, okay, this is good. Reminds me of the arcade. But I did Afterburner was awesome. I love playing Afterburner on my Genesis.
Oh, you know what? I don't think so.
Afterburner 2
was on the Sega Genesis.
I got that one.
The original one though, there's an arcade perfect port on the 32X of all things.
Yeah. Remember that arcade machine that actually like went back and forth and felt like you're getting
yeah.
I love the super scalar technology. So Outrun's kind of in there too, but yeah, just like
I knew that was on the 32X, but I didn't know it was supposed to look that close. That's cool.
Yeah.
I also was the only person I knew who had a 32X, which
I won at launch day. Christmas.
Yeah, did you do what I did and get rid of yours and then have to spend way too much for it when you went back to get another one?
Yep.
You know, I think my nostalgia for that ran out before I made that decision.
Oh, so you haven't ever? I had to have it just for the Knuckles Chaotix.
I really have not picked it up again, and I think it's because my favorite game for the system at the time was Doom.
Yeah.
And guess what?
And
they're like
why
so
now?
many other
There's
systems now.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
32X was my introduction to Doom, so of course I love the heck out of it. But now when you go back and try and play that version compared to like almost every other version of Doom, it's pretty.
It's like Star Wars Arcade. Like I find that like not that we've gone back and like remade that or anything, but the polygons and stuff I find it a little bit hard to go back to.
Yeah, it's just because it's not even as fun as the original arcade game.
Nah.
It looks pretty good. The presentation was pretty great for the time.
It was,
but
yeah.
It's just really hard and not fun after a while when you just keep dying on the same spots.
No, 32X is one of those systems, one of those mushroom add-ons that I own for 1 or 2 games. I couldn't not have Knuckles Chaotix anymore. That just wasn't okay. Not that it's one of the greatest of the Sonic games, but I have to have that game.
Yeah, and
Spider-Man game on there.
Yeah, which I've never actually played.
Yeah. So the problem with that
it's like a $100 game or something, is it not?
Yeah, and it's really not worth it. That's the problem. And I try not to hate on the 32X so much because there's stuff on there like Virtual Fighter and Virtual Racing that are really good, and Afterburner. But sheesh, the problem with Web of Fire. No,
it's nice to hear somebody else say nice things about Virtual Racing. I always loved that game.
You know what? I thought it was a showpiece title on the Sega Genesis.
See, so did I, but I never hear anybody talk about it anymore.
Playing it on the Nomad was the best way to play it.
Oh, really?
Sega Genesis. Yeah, that was the coolest thing was because, you didn't have portable 3D systems really.
That's a good point. Yeah.
You had the PSP later on, but being able to play like a portable 3D game on a portable Sega Genesis.
There was something that, for some reason, at the time, I don't mean now, but at the time, Virtual Racing felt more realistic than other racing games because they dropped the music out about 30 seconds into a track.
Yeah, you'd hear that intro, that awesome intro tune, and then you just hear like the
the whole rest of the time, and it was like you just felt like you were driving Formula race cars.
Yeah, and then you'd have the guy, say turn right, and
yeah.
But that was.
Oh yeah, I forgot about the announcer voice. Yeah.
Yeah, you had the announcer guy, which Sega went crazy with that, with like Daytona USA.
Yeah.
And Sega Rally, where it was like easy left. Easy right.
And then being a sports fan, the 32X kind of disappointed in that era.
Yeah,
I wasn't a big fan of any of this.
Yeah, so there was WWF Raw on 32X, which was actually pretty solid. But there was so much more potential for the 32X to have great games than it did, and that was the problem. It was totally Sega's stopgap measure between the Sega Genesis and the Saturn. There was really no reason for it because you think about it, the 32X launched in 1994. 6 months later, also in 1994, they launched the Sega Saturn and shot themselves in the foot. Why?
Yeah, you can't release and I mean, like, it's not really a console, but it cost enough. It felt like buying another console. And then you ask people to buy your next system, and that's ultimately what killed them.
Yeah, and being a general consumer at the time, not following the games industry like I do now, I was just like, "Oh, what's this? It's a Saturn. Where did this come from?" And I think that was everyone's reaction at the time, was just that it's another console that I had no clue was coming out, and it's really expensive.
Well, I forget which of you said it. One of you guys said that you didn't get a Saturn until they put out like the triple pack bundle. I had the same thing. It sounds like Aaron and I had about the same history with Sega stuff.
What? I think we're the same person. I think that's
no, we're not, because I can't write music like you.
Oh, that's all right.
And I don't play RPGs. So those are
a much more successful show going on. So
you just wait. I'm gonna help you guys out. I hope we can help some people find you guys. But you guys have built a wonderful following all on your own. It's it's astounding how dedicated your viewers are, your listeners. I guess not viewers yet, but they'll be viewers eventually when you do more viewing, more things that are to be viewed.
Yeah, we have a little YouTube presence right now, real small. I've been doing some videos, but yeah, our community is fantastic, and I can probably speak for Aaron too. There's times when it's just like, oh, it's going to be tough to do another podcast this month, so busy. But these guys and gals that are on our community, that they just encourage us. I get messages all the time, just people saying, "Hey, love your podcast. It got me through work today," and hearing things like that. It's not even the donations on Patreon. We mainly use Patreon because it costs a little bit of money for us to run the podcast, but hearing, yeah, and the website and all that stuff. We're trying to get away from Podomatic, but Podomatic's expensive and it shouldn't be, but I'll go on that tangent later. But hearing those little encouraging words of, hey, you all got me through work. You know, I think one person said something about they had a pet that had died recently and they started listening to our show and it got them through a hard time. Like, man, I'm getting all emotional. That touches my heart a little bit. I'm like, wow, that our nerdy podcast about the Sega Genesis helped someone through a hard time. That's awesome.
I have the very same thing, guys. I mean, that's a lot of what keeps me going.
Yeah.
Anytime I have days where I'm like, man, I don't know, maybe I should go work on something else. I'll start thinking about the folks that have told me that like Superhero Rewind helped them get through English class in college or something, and I'm like, yeah, no, I like doing this. I think I should stick around. Guys, what is the best fighter on the Genesis?
Ooh, I know. Me personally, I would probably say Super Street Fighter 2.
Yep.
But I think the translation for Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition was handled a little better. The sounds are a little better in that, and the fact that you can like go straight to 10 speed, which is like super fast for the time. But you need to play with a 6-button controller. So I think that's probably my favorite. What about you, Nick?
Yeah, I actually got Super Street Fighter 2 in my Genesis right now, and I have the you got to have the crap. I'm gonna break my whole desk. I won't show you that. I got the fighter stick right here on my desk. Yeah, so it's great. I agree with Aaron though. The champion, I have both versions, the Championship Edition or whatever you call that one.
Oh, can I show you guys something real quick?
Ooh, pretty.
So I don't know if you can see that right there.
Oh, that's great.
So that's actually 8-Bit Do actually put out a controller recently that's a Street Fighter 2 30th anniversary or Street Fighter 30th anniversary controller for the Sega Genesis that actually hooks into USB and a Sega Genesis. It has 2 ports, so it's insane and great for these games we're talking about.
Yeah, actually,
no affiliation with this company, but it's pretty cool.
I was just playing this the other day, Super Street Fighter 2.
There it is.
Just the other day.
I was always a big fan of Fatal Fury.
Yeah, I love SNK games. Fatal Fury was super solid. Samurai Shodown, I think, was Sega CD. And then you know what? We're gonna have people that are saying, well, what about Mortal Kombat 2?
Mortal Kombat.
It pains me to say this, but I think Mortal Kombat 2 had the slight edge on SNES.
Oh yeah.
I think a lot of people agree with that.
Yeah, it was the first time where you could tell, like when Mortal Kombat 1 came out on Genesis and came out on SNES, there was that huge war going on there. Well, the SNES version was crippled because it didn't have blood, right?
Yeah.
All the characters sweat when you have fatalities. With the Genesis version, you could do a blood code and you had blood and everything. With MK2, it was a little more evenly matched, and I think the translation on the SNES one was just a little better.
Yeah.
And then you had stuff like Eternal Champions, which was an original Sega IP fighter, which is pretty cool. But then you go back and try and play it now, and it just does not hold up so great.
Very, very slow compared. You get used to these new fighters like the Injustice games and the new Street Fighter games. They have that fast pace, and Street Fighter 2 could hold its own still, especially when Aaron was talking about turning up the hyper or the speed on that. But going back to like I have Samurai Showdown on Genesis, and I like it, but man, it's slow. And then going back to like you said, Eternal Champions, it's hard for me to get through that game. But when I was a kid, I loved it.
So I said what the best fighting game on the Sega Genesis is, but in reality, if you ever get to play, there's an import on the Mega Drive, which is the Japanese version of the Sega Genesis.
Yeah,
there's a game called Yu Yu Hakusho, which is based off the anime, and it's a fighting game by Treasure, and it has some of the best graphics that you'll ever see on the Sega Genesis.
Yeah.
just super fluid and kind of like Fatal Fury. You can jump between two planes.
Yeah, that was always cool.
So yeah, if you ever get the chance to check that one out, that's an amazing fighter for the system. And it's another game where you can actually, it's the only fighting game on the Sega Genesis that you can play 4-player.
Oh, interesting. Was there a tap for it?
So something that came out in Japan. I don't know if there was like a specific multi-tap they made for it, but I know.
Okay. I don't know how you
out there. So there were like 4-player games like Bomberman and General Chaos. But yeah, this one.
That tennis game. Did that tennis game come with like a special? What was that tennis game called on the Genesis? It came with like a. It had some special four tap on it.
That wasn't David Crane. I can't remember which one.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about though.
And
there was like Micro Machines where it was crazy because it had a 4-player. It had 2 Genesis ports built into the cartridge.
The cartridge, yes.
Which is just insane. Like, you know what?
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, let's just put ports on the actual card and you stick that into the system and plug your extra controllers into that.
I wouldn't think the hardware would even allow you to do such a thing. Nick, did you know what?
There's companies that come up with these crazy things. There's another company that did the same thing. It was there's this game on Sega Genesis called Zero Tolerance, which was an early first-person shooter, and they actually had a special port that you could order with the game that lets you play a LAN game. Basically, if someone had another Sega Genesis and a copy of Zero Tolerance, you could play LAN multiplayer on this game.
You'll see things like that where there'll be a feature like that at first sounds really neat, and then you think back and you go, there are 5 people in the world that did that.
X-Band, yeah, it was the same way. Where it was like it was modem net play, but you maybe
whoever did that,
right? Because they were making a killing. Because you know what, they could charge like $40 to you every month. You know, $30-$40 for you to use this online service that supports 5 games.
Nick, a minute ago you mentioned Modern Fighters and Injustice 2. I made a big mistake last weekend. I've been playing. I want to tell you guys this. I've been subscribing lately to PlayStation Now and playing some of the Sega stuff that they have on that service. And it's, I don't know if you guys know about that, but it's live stream gaming. And you guys are the reason that I'm wasting money on that service, by the way, because I didn't know there was a remaster for Knights, and Knights is one of my favorite games of all time. In fact, Knights is the thing that put me over the edge and made me finally start, and quick plug for this for you guys, subscribing to your Patreon and pledging there because I had to hear your Knights review. And then you also did Crazy Taxi and you did Typing of the Dead. It's like, oh, they're just making an extra podcast just for me. Okay, cool. And so I found out about through you guys through the Knights update, and I was like, well, I have to go see what that looks like. And I don't own a PS3, and the only way I could play it on my PS4 was to get a 7-day trial of PlayStation Now. And I was like, well, I can play Knights in 7 days. So I get on there, and then I start scrolling through games, and they have a few things on PS3 that were exclusive to that I never got to play that I always wanted to because I never had a PS3. Heavy Rain is there. I haven't done it yet, but I still really want to play that. And I never got around to the BioShock games, which is a bunch of stuff that I've always wanted to play that's there. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'll do this for a while. You know, maybe I'll pay like $20, do a month of it. And then they had Virtua Fighter 2 online.
Yes, I have.
And I said, I guess I'm going to waste my money playing a 25-year-old game because I can play it with other people online. And there actually is a small community. If you play on a Friday night or a Saturday night, you can find people to play with. And I didn't think I would find anybody to play with. And the first night I played one guy, I was 6-0. I was rocking it. The next time I played, I was 6 and like 36. I just got creamed, and because naturally anybody else that's going to be playing Virtua Fighter Online is going to be really super good at it because they all have these massive scores, but it's like it looks like all they're doing. And then, but Nick, the mistake I made was I played Injustice 2 with my son, Jason, for like 2 hours, and then I immediately went and played Virtua Fighter 2 online. I started trying to do Injustice moves, played Virtua Fighter 2, and it took
like
me about
from Mortal Kombat to
it took me about 10 minutes to remember, what my scheme was and what game I was playing. There's a big difference between something like an AM2 game and a Mortal Kombat.
There's even a difference between Virtual Fighter and between Tekken that just totally different feels.
Yeah.
Oh, of course, yeah. And I always wanted to see those cross over, but I don't know how much sense that would ultimately make.
I haven't seen a new Virtual Fighter game in quite a while.
Virtual Fighter 5 was like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
There's been no talk about anything new. What I would like to see is a new Fighters Mega Mix. I would like to see them come back, Fighting Vipers in again, and then find and Fighting Vipers is also there, and you can play that online, but I don't think there's anybody playing that online.
No, it was obscure to begin with. Throwing it into Fighters Mega Mix helped that franchise.
I had never heard of it until Fighters Mega Mix.
Yeah.
Same here.
And maybe throw in some Last Bronx. There's another obscure Sega 3D brawler.
But if they could get the rights, like if they could team up with whoever makes Tekken, it might be kind of cool to see them try to mix Tekken in, because it's at least another 3D fighter. Like you could make
There's
that
Street
work.
Fighter versus Tekken, so it's not impossible.
There's precedent. It's happened with other companies. Yeah.
Yeah, and Bandai Namco, who makes Tekken, is really heavy in the Nintendo world right now, which Sega is as well.
Yeah.
So kind of hoping, you never know, that could happen. It'd be nice to see that over there.
Because you've got the Smash Brothers series, which does have Sega characters, and it does have Namco and
Konami. And Street Fighter.
But what it doesn't have is it doesn't have a Virtual Fighter character.
That's true.
No, and there's nothing stopping them there because they have access to Sega stuff.
Yeah. But I guess they've. What's surprising to me is that Solid Snake is in there, and
Cloud,
Bayonetta. I'm just like, where's they've got these people. Why not someone from Virtual Fighter or from Tekken?
Sonic's a day one character on that game. That's huge.
Man, if they put Sarah from Virtua Fighter in the middle of Smash Brothers, I would lose my mind.
Is she your go-to character?
She's my go-to, man. Okay. Yeah, but she wouldn't play the same way, and I wouldn't be able to deal with that. So maybe that would. I don't know. I don't know if the control scheme with Smash Brothers. I really want to deal with Virtual Fighter characters. That's maybe a bad idea.
The problem is that you can pull characters from other games that aren't so much fighters, but you pull them from other fighting games, and it's going to throw people for a loop. Like, are you really going to put in this character that has 50,000 moves for a game that is relatively simpler?
Yeah, and in that game, well, yeah, because Virtual is relatively deep. It's not as deep as what's that other game that sometimes has Virtual Fighter characters in it? I can't even think of it right now. There's like Dead or Alive. Dead or Alive.
Yeah,
love that game.
I finally played it for the first time because they put Virtual Fighter characters in it. Yeah. Sarah's in that now.
Yeah, it has a deep grappling system. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's got the counter system.
Wonderfully challenging.
When Dead or Alive 2 came out on the Dreamcast, me and a couple buddies from high school would play that game for hours. We learned all the characters. There was a reversal feature in that game that you could reverse mid, high, and low attacks. And man, we got real good at that game. So we played it a lot. Yeah, that's a good one. I think they stopped making those
somehow, or rather, and I don't know how it happened. We've already been talking for an hour. I don't know where all that time went. Are you guys willing to hang out for a little bit longer?
Yeah, let's do it.
Sure.
I've got some more questions for you. I want to talk to the audience. We have a few people that have been leaving some questions. Thanks so much for doing that. You guys have at least one, if not a couple people from your audience here chatting in the comments. I don't know if you guys are looking at the comments right now, but we were talking about fighting games on the Genesis. David Crabtree's there in the comments. Hi, David. He says there was a Buster Douglas boxing game that he liked.
Yeah, we covered that not too long ago.
Yeah, we covered it, and it was actually a port of an I'd say unrelated, but when they ported it to the Sega Genesis, it was because Mike Tyson had been knocked out by Buster Douglas. And that was the only reason, because Sega was like in such a hurry to have something to compete with Mike Tyson's Punch-Out.
Yep.
They had to have something that was kind of a one-up on Nintendo. And so I think it was called Final Blow. But it was a Taito game in the arcade, and they brought it over to the Sega Genesis. And no, it's nowhere near as good as Punch Out, but it's a fun game to go back to. It's still got that arcadey rock'em sock'em feel to it, where it's just tap the buttons as fast as possible.
Yeah, rock'em sock'em is probably the best way to explain that. Over exaggerated characters, over exaggerated muscles bulging from their arms, and it's fun for a little while. You had to go check it out on our podcast. We did cover that and give it a rating. I don't want to give any spoilers out, but definitely a button masher. I'd give it that. Just get in and start hitting the buttons as fast as you can.
NZ17 there is a fan of you guys and wants me to ask you guys, of course, what is love?
Baby, don't hurt me.
Baby, don't hurt me. No more.
So much that someone wants me to actually make Sega Genesis
version of that. You got to do it. That's the best idea.
It's gonna happen. I know it is.
What is love?
You won't know when, but
is an even bigger running gag than Stop Talking. But Stop Talking is up there.
Yeah, I can explain Stop Talking real quick.
You can if you want to. It's great.
Sure, I don't mind.
And I listened to that show and was like, how did they leave that in there? Like, he sounds like he's gonna abuse his children. And don't worry, Aaron. I've been there, buddy. I wasn't concerned, but I thought it was hilarious.
Oh,
and then a short few later, you guys are like,
lost my cool there. But so Nick and I were recording, and it was a night where I had my kids on the weekends, and so my kids were supposed to be in bed, but my youngest and my second oldest, my daughter Kat and my son, they were chatting and they were talking, and they started throwing stuff at each other when they were supposed to be sleeping. And so I think I just gotten done talking, and so when you're on Skype, you can hit the mute button, but if you're on Audacity, Audacity just records everything. So I recorded through Audacity, and so it's going to pick up anything that I say on the mic, even if Skype is muted. So of course that's what happened. And I said, stop talking, just really, really loud. But the timing was so much that it sounded like I was telling Nick to stop talking.
Yeah. And throughout the years, when I first started doing podcasts and editing them, I would listen to the whole thing, just monotonous, and just delete every little hiccup, this and that. And as I got more when
I started,
and as I got more comfortable, I just started putting in my segments, cleaning things up. So I don't listen to the whole thing from start to finish. I go in and put the segments that we have in there. I clean up some of the blank spaces. So I apparently missed that when I went back and played it until someone, of course, we had about 20 people pointing out to me. So I went back and edited it out. So it's the Aladdin episode. So if you go back and look for
is that what it was? I didn't remember which one it was.
Yeah, it was Aladdin, and I might
try to hear in the back, and you just go, "Stop talking!"
And I think it was the embarrassing part.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think it was the embarrassing part where I was admitting that I like the Super Nintendo version of Aladdin better than the Genesis. So it was like perfect of Aaron telling me, "Stop talking."
Yeah, and I posted. You guys saw it. I posted on you guys' Facebook. I was reading. It's weird how this lined up because I had just booked you guys, and I'm reading the Injustice comics in preparation for a review, and there's a panel where Batman is or Superman's fighting Batman, and Superman just screams, "Stop talking!" Yes. Exclamation point, jagged balloon around it, and I took a picture with my phone, and I was like, I've got to send that to Genesis Gems.
Yep. Oh yes, I've also done the Batman and Robin one, and I redid that.
Yeah,
one.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Yes. But yes, let me look at some more comments here before we go back to a few of my things. Everything Geek wants to know what Sega game frustrated you guys the most, and he also asks if you guys ever had the Sega Channel.
Oh yeah, Nick, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I'll tackle the Sega Channel. I didn't have it, but one of my real good friends who I played baseball with had it at his grandma's house, and I'd spend the night with him about every weekend. And the funny thing was, they would never let us rent the Beavis and Butthead game. So when everyone went to sleep, Beavis and Butthead was on the Sega Channel, so that's all we played. We played Beavis and Butthead on there, and that's pretty much my only exposure. It looked awesome. It was so cool going through there and finding all these awesome games I hadn't heard of, but again, like I said, we just kept playing Beavis
and insanely ahead of its time. Just like the Game Gear was.
Yeah. I think Sega just had all these awesome ideas. I mean, it's just, they're even when the Dreamcast came out with the online play of a lot of the stuff they were doing was so ahead of its time. But
and read Console Wars for the history of some of that stuff, because it's really interesting. And that book goes in. I'm not a big fan of that book's prose, but there's a lot of really good information there.
Yeah,
I've heard of that book that it kind of fills in too many blanks.
It does. It reads like a fictional narrative, and that's really problematic because it's impossible to know. Like, it should say based on a true story and play like a biopic, and it plays too much like it's for real, definitely what happened. And you're like, but you're reading 3 pages of constant dialogue, and some of it reads a little sappy, and it's like it's like, nah, he wants this to be a movie, and he wrote a movie in a book, and I kind of wish it should be an oral history, right? Like the information there's really good, and there's some fun moments that he comes up with, but I wish he had taken. I'm just reviewing this book now. I wish he had just taken the discussions he had with people, the interviews, and just made it an oral history, kind of like the Star Trek 50-year book that came out, 50-year mission book that came out for the anniversary, which does that. That's what that should have been.
I can definitely see your point there. If we go back, I think Nick, most frustrating game.
Yeah, sorry, most frustrating game. Thanks for keeping us on track.
Yeah,
that's my job on our show.
Most frustrating games definitely Contra Hard Corps, because I always consider myself very good at Contra games. I can beat the original Contra on NES with no continues, no cheat codes. Do really well at Super C, but man, when I started playing Contra Hard Corps, love the game, don't get me wrong, but my goodness, I just suck at that game so bad. It's frustrating to me because I feel like I'm great at Contra games. I'm good at the one on Super Nintendo. I'm good at the ones came out here recently on the Nintendo DS and things like that, but I suck at Contra Hard Corps, and it makes me so mad. Very frustrating.
Very frustrating, but still enjoyable is Jungle Strike. Jungle Strike series. Jungle Strike on the Sega Genesis has some of the most frustrating controls because of the momentum system in that game. So your helicopter kind of swings wildly if you're not careful, and it's really easy to knock into buildings and knock stuff. You can knock the Washington Monument over and crash into the White House, and
then Jeff Goldblum comes on and says they love to get the monuments.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I would say that, followed by probably Comic Zone, because
I was going to bring that up later and ask you guys what you thought of that game.
One insanely stupid jump in that first level at the very end of the level. It's the Widowmaker.
You got to kill that thing first. You got to kill that thing first.
Kill this enemy first, and then you have to time this jump just right. It felt like Battletoads all over again. If you don't get the timing of these jumps just right, you're going to fall in a pit and die. And the problem with Comic Zone is it's a one-life game.
Yeah.
You get to the end of this level, you're like, man, this game is so awesome. It's got great grunge music. It's got fantastic.
I've never been past the second level. I can't do it.
Yeah, but there's just like these really hard parts of the game. Yeah. Okay, so the other part of the question, what I'm trying to remember. So it was.
Did you have Sega Channel?
I didn't have Sega Channel, but we had a next door neighbor whose dad was literally a cable guy. He worked for Time Warner Cable, and so we would go over there as much as possible because he got all the channels, and then he had Sega Channel. And I remember stuff like Golden Axe 3, which was insane because it didn't get a physical release, and also Mega Man Wily Wars, which was a collection of the first 3 Mega Man games that you could play on the Sega Channel. And there were even exclusive little titles you could play on there that never got a physical release otherwise. So it was pretty great time to be alive as a kid.
Yeah, and it's real neat because people are actually still collecting that hardware, even though it doesn't work anymore, and people pay good money for that. It's hilarious. Yeah, I mean, not saying it, I would definitely pick it up if I saw it out.
Hey, everybody, it's Eric. Eric, just wave and say hi.
Hi. Hey,
Eric.
What's happening?
we're talking about Sega and stuff, Eric. No, don't apologize. I'm glad. No, I love it when you make a cameo, buddy. It's great. That was Eric. He doesn't play a lot of video games, but he knows things about everything.
Two years, like 3 days past due.
Have you started playing that yet?
Nope, haven't started playing. It's like 3 days past due.
Oh, well, don't get in trouble over Tomb Raider. That'd be bad. Yeah.
Is that, Rise of the Tomb Raider, or which one is that?
I'll see you later, buddy. It's the first in the relaunch, whatever that's called. Okay. I think it wasn't just called Tomb Raider.
Yeah. What's crazy is I was just playing that on PS4.
Oh yeah, is it 3 days late? Is it due? Do you have to take it back?
My copy. No, I got it on PlayStation Plus, so it's not due.
Uncharted Part 5. That's good.
Pretty much what it's like.
But it's pretty much Uncharted.
Things. Yeah,
good stuff.
It's a lot like Uncharted.
Guys, Joseph Garris here in the comments asks, yes. You are stranded on a desert. Is that one of your guys?
Yes, he is.
You are stranded on a desert. Which would you rather play? Zool, Arrow the Acrobat 2, or Caesar's Palace? What 3 random, eclectically assorted games?
Okay, so I'll go first.
What is Zool?
Zool was basically there was this company, I think Gremlin Graphics, that wanted to make the next Sonic killer. Okay, so this is a port of an Amiga game that ran super fast for the Amiga, and then it got ported to Sega Genesis, and I think it lost some stuff in the translation. So what's funny is it's supposed to play a little bit like you're kind of like an intergalactic ninja in that game. Okay, kind of like Zen, obscure comic book character. But yeah, you're this ninja, anthropomorphic for some reason. You're kind of like an animal ninja. And you run around and jump and collect things, which in this case I think was Chupa Chups. Have you heard of that company?
No.
Are you familiar with that company? So this is like a candy company. And so they got this candy company to be a license on this game. And so like there's just so much licensing in this game for this candy company that it's insane. So yeah, answer the question.
Why you told me that? Because if I ever played that, I would be like, this must just be some made-up corporation that owns the universe in this game.
Right, absolutely. It's just kind of weird because I had Zool 2 on the Atari Jaguar of all things.
Yeah, the Jaguar.
You had a Jaguar. That I did not have.
That's another story. But Arrow the Acrobat 2 is probably my pick out of the 3. I think it's the most solid game. Caesar's Palace is okay. But unless it's a really good casino game, like I look to the one on there's a PS1 Caesar's Palace game I think that has Adam West in it.
Really? It's awesome.
Yeah. And he does.
Adam West is actually right here with us. He's watching our podcast right now. Yeah, he's right back there.
He did all this acting, and there's these bookend movies and stuff that happen during the gameplay on the PS1 game that just make it over the top and campy and great. But yeah, Caesar's Palace on the Genesis. I
played that. It was. I mean, I think those casino games were kind of a dime a dozen.
Like there was a few others I played that were probably better, just more enjoyable experiences. Like Casino Kid on NES.
Oh,
had a story mode to it. Vegas Stakes on Super Nintendo.
Oh no, you're right. Vegas Stakes was the best I played. Probably.
I think so.
I loved roulette.
You had these randomized, almost like tabletop RPG elements, where randomized things would happen to your character, almost based on a dice roll, and so you would have these situations that you would have to deal with.
I forgot about that. I just remember. Wow, I have a flood of memories after you said that. I forgot all about that game. I was just remembering like the music in the roulette part. I remember liking the music in that a lot.
Yeah. I think it was a HAL game. It was actually a sequel. And here I am going on tangents, but
no, you're fine, man.
It was a sequel to an NES game called Vegas Dreams, and
yeah.
Vegas Stakes is a super solid game.
Yeah.
No, Aaron, when you start running off with yourself, I just want to take notes.
And this is just proof that he doesn't go and research his stuff in the middle of the show. I mean, he just bam.
No, I'm just going off the top of my head here. But
there would have been nothing for him to research. I did not give you the questions ahead of time. That was on purpose.
I love
it. Joseph, I'm really curious about those 3 games and why you put those together. Zool and Arrow the Acrobat are both kind of like Sonic-esque side scrollers, and then one of these things is not like the others. One of these things just doesn't belong.
Sonic collects rings. He's kind of a gambler.
Vegas level.
Does it fit? I was going to say, does it fit just because
Casino
of
Night
the
Zone.
Casino Night Zone? Is that what it is?
Now we were talking earlier about like our favorite desert island games. Does he have a desert island question? It was the desert island game choice of those 3 games, right?
Yeah.
Nick, did you have one that you wanted to pick?
Yeah, Nick, what was your? I'm sorry, we're talking right over Nick.
Oh, you're fine. No. I strangely would probably disagree. I love Caesar's Palace. Love that game. I love the fact that you can walk around and kind of pick what machine you're going to be on. If you're going to do high stakes, low stakes.
Are you picking the odd man out? Are you picking the one that does not belong in that list?
I strangely love casino games. I don't know why. It was real funny.
I do.
And I own Caesar Palace on the Super Nintendo, and I actually, for our 10-year anniversary a couple years ago, my wife and I went to Las Vegas, and I went to a retro game store, and I'm like, I gotta buy a casino game when I'm in Las Vegas, so I bought Caesar's Palace at this retro game store.
Oh, that's great! That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nick, I will say, I love casino games too, and I think it's great when a game that's a non-casino game throws in a random card game as a mini game. I think that's amazing, and I love it every time a game does that. Like Deja Vu on the NES lets you play blackjack. I think Leisure Suit Larry on the PC lets you play some.
Yeah, and there was a racing game on the Nintendo. I can't remember the name of it. That had like a video poker.
Yeah,
like inside the garage or something. What was that?
There was even Xenogears on the Sony PlayStation.
Yeah,
let you play a version of Speed. Speed was like my favorite card game.
Yeah, or like The Witcher when you get to play was that card game like Gwent or something? Yeah. I love stuff like it.
Or
and even Mario 3 has the matching game, which I was always horrible at.
Love that stuff. I think Mass Effect had some stuff like that too.
Mass Effect's gambling game was really quick and to the point and drained your pockets.
Yeah.
Joseph in the comments again says he picked up Zool last week at a flea market, so that's why he mentioned that.
Oh, cool,
and he says the other 2 were just completely random games, and then he says thanks for answering.
Yeah, Joseph's actually doing some cool reproduction stuff.
Oh, neat!
He's like a little reproduction business going pretty soon.
Yeah, he's he's sending me some stuff now that I am going to pay you for, Joseph. And then once he gets up and going, we're going to promote the junk out of that for him. So
that's awesome.
I just think it's a great opportunity to talk about reproductions real quick.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, I'm going to do something really unprofessional. I'm going to run off real quick because there's something I have to show you guys.
Yes.
So, Aaron, would you take over for the 5 seconds it will take for me to go back to my game room and grab this?
Go grab it.
You start talking, and I will come back and pretend like I was paying attention.
Yeah. I'm just going to explain reproductions real quick for people.
Go ahead.
Watching. Hey, so reproductions, you might have seen these sometimes if you ever go to a game store or something, and you see a game, and maybe it's a game that came out in Japan, and there was a fan translation for it, or something, or it never came out in the States, and you see it and you're like, whoa, what's that? And people will actually take like a sports game or something, or they'll use a custom mold, and they will burn a ROM onto the EEPROM of the game. And there's some problem with it, only that sometimes people will try to pass off reproductions of legit games as the real deal and try to sell them online on Craigslist and things like that. The Sega Genesis doesn't have as much of a problem with that, but be careful. What's going on with like the reproductions we're talking about though with Joseph, is that he's making it explicitly known that this is a reproduction. Like you'll be able to tell from the outset. But the cool thing is, if you're a collector, and there's that one game like Musha or something like that, where it's like some really obscure shooter for the system, and it goes for ridiculous prices like $200-$250. Maybe you just want the game on your shelf, or you want a custom box for it. Reproductions let you do that, or let you.
Or you just want to be able to play with an original controller.
Absolutely. You want to play it because emulation will never get. I do emulation, but emulation will never get 100% the quality of what you get on a real system.
Yeah, and Aaron, I know you probably have this too. One of our listeners, Ross Beck, made us this Mortal Kombat 2 Ultimate.
Yes,
it's like a full on. I mean, you can see
full on hack of Mortal Kombat 2. It's almost like Mortal Kombat Trilogy, where it includes a ton of characters.
The back of the card itself, it's got a bunch of weird stuff. It's definitely a different mold. You can see a little slits there, but it plays in your Genesis. It's got all kinds of cool stuff on it. So I have a couple reproduction carts as well.
We are going to do a Patreon episode on that game at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and of course, custom box art has kind of become an art in and of itself now.
Yeah, because if you think about it, some of the artwork on Sega Genesis games is pretty bad. The American artwork, it's dependent on the game,
and sometimes it doesn't look like it belongs with the game you're playing at all.
No, and sometimes it worked out okay, but I think one of the worst examples is a Super Nintendo game. It was Phalanx, and it's supposed to be like a space shooter game.
The guy with the banjo,
like
right?
An old man with a long beard playing a banjo, and you see like the spaceship flying overhead.
I always thought that was gonna be a fishing game when I rented it, and I turned the box and I'm like, oh, that looks awesome. It's not a fishing game.
Well, and of course, one of the classics is Mega Man.
Oh, yeah, Mega Man is one of the best / worst examples.
Right there.
Where
I mean, that isn't the
Mega Man 2, yeah.
But it doesn't look anything like Mega Man. Yeah, show that again, Nick.
Right there. That's one of my favorite games of all time, so I got it on my shelf.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I wanted, Aaron, when you were talking about reproductions and stuff, this is not a reproduction, but I want to show you something that I bought when I was making Spawn Year. You guys said you looked at the channel a little bit. I don't know if you ran into Spawn Year, but that was a series that I did that took me 2 years. It's supposed to be a year, but it took 2 years to make. And it has a narrative component, but it's reviews of a Spawn issue or a Spawn something every day. And I did all the Spawn video games. And for a prop for that show, I found just while I was looking for the Dreamcast Spawn game, which I think is actually one of the better games on that console. It's a really fun melee arcade game. It's a port of some other game. I don't know what it is. They used that engine and put Spawn on top of it. Do you have any idea what that is?
Okay, so you're talking about. I think it was. So there were
the Demon's
games. Are you talking about the arcade system?
Yeah. Do you have any idea what that was?
Yeah. So around that time, I know Sega had put out like they had an arcade board. I think it was the Naomi board that made it compatible with the Dreamcast. So they would put out games in the arcade, and then they would port them to the Dreamcast. Is that what you mean? There was stuff like Crazy Taxi that ran on the same hardware, and that's why if you like emulate the Dreamcast, you can also emulate this same arcade board.
Well, I thought there was some Japanese game that was the Spawn game, but they just put the Spawn characters kind of on top of it. They just used that engine, but I don't know if that's true.
Oh, they used a similar engine.
And like it was something else before.
I know what you're talking about. I just can't remember what the other game
was. I read that in the back of a Spawn comic from the day. That like Brian Haldwin or someone was talking about it, and I don't remember what it is now. And after I made that show, I sold my entire Spawn collection, so I don't have it anymore. But anyway, or at least I sold the comics. That show kind of nearly broke me because the stories are so bad. But I've kept a lot of my other Spawn stuff, and one of the things that I like I said that I bought for that show that I've hung on to is this custom painted Spawn Dreamcast.
Oh. That's gorgeous.
Nice.
And this is one of my favorite pieces in my collection.
Oh man, that's great.
And so it's got the emblem on the buttons, and then when you pop it open, I've got Crazy Taxi in there right now. When you pop it open, he's painted inside. That's what it looks like there. Great. And I talked to him after I bought this and told him what I was using it for, and he went and looked at the channel. And when I got it, and he and I started talking a lot. And I've been thinking about sending him some of my other systems and having him paint on them, and pay him to do that. And anyway, when it got here, the top was bubbled over because it was really hot and it was in transit for too long. And so I had to send it back to him so that he could buff it and fix it. And he signed it and wrote my YouTube handle, Captain Logan, on the back of it.
Oh, nice.
Which is really cool. And then this is what the controller looks like.
That's amazing.
Oh, wow.
So I thought you guys might appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that's the best of the Spawn games of that era, because you like.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, the Super
Nintendo game was it had a lot of cool ideas, but was just really boring to play.
I did enjoy playing.
I don't fully agree with that. I think it's fun. I think it's unnecessarily hard, and I think that some of the boss battles are ridiculous. Every other Spawn game is poor to nearly unplayable. Besides the Junkies.
Yeah. I remember the ads for that game being insane.
Yeah.
Because like it was like a double gatefold, and you'd see like some guys like arm sticking up, and then like you would fold the gatefold back, and you would see that his arm was detached.
I never saw that.
Like how they got away with this in a video game magazine at the time. But yeah, I remember being more thrilled with the actual, and I played the demo a bit. I remember being more thrilled with the ad than the game itself.
I love.
Sorry, Nick. Go ahead.
I'd love playing as Spawn in the Soul Calibur 2 version on Xbox.
Yeah, I never got to play it like that because I didn't have an original Xbox.
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
Yeah, that game is the PlayStation game, and again, I reviewed all of them in Spawn here. I would never have played that if it weren't for that. And that game is ridiculous. It's ridiculous, Aaron, because whenever you get into, I think it's that one. Whenever you get into any battle, it suddenly turns into a 2D fighter.
Yes,
and it's ridiculous. And that's the only time you're wearing a cape.
Yeah, I remember that. Otherwise, it's like a third-person roam around type game.
Aaron, you intimidate me. Just the stuff you know. In Z17 to all three of us, what are your thoughts and hopes about a sequel to Sonic Mania? That was on my list. I was going to ask you guys about that.
It has to happen. It's the best Sonic game in the past 10, 15 years.
It is. No, it's got to have. And the thing is that does what I was hoping it would, which is it proves that there's no reason we couldn't have continued to get them all the way up until now.
Yeah. Here's where I think it should change. I think they should drop the needing to remix old Sonic stuff, because I think Green Hill Zone has been remixed to death. It's showing up in like almost every Sonic zone in some permutation.
Yeah.
No, we need a fully original game that doesn't feel the need to lean on nostalgia.
Just don't give me werewolves and crap. I don't need King Arthur. I don't need Lancelot. I don't need this. Sonic goes to, medieval fun time. Just
and what
give
Sonic
me a good Sonic game and make it fun like the original games were.
And what Sonic Mania did so good, it brought back Green Hill and Chemical Zone, whatever, but it introduced new levels that were memorable for the first time in years. I can't tell you a Sonic stage in the past 10 years I can even remember that was new. It's like, I got Chemical Zone, I got Green Hill Zone, great, but Studiopolis, like, I will forever remember that stage.
Same here. Yeah. What was nice about the remixes is that at least when you got to the second stage, they added some new mechanics.
Yeah.
And like Chemical Plant Zone, that second stage, there's a couple of new things there that they could have built an entire new zone around.
Absolutely, yeah. They could have expanded it even more. And I think going back to those old levels, they even expanded those where it's familiar, but there were some differences in the way the gameplay works that make it a little smoother than what you might remember if you ever played the original games.
Yeah, in marketing that, I'm hoping that if they make another one, and it's done pretty well, I would be very surprised if they didn't go back to Whitehead and ask him to make another one. But in marketing that, I think what they need to realize is that it's not just a nostalgia trip. The reason that game is so playable and people, young and old, who grew up with those games or didn't, or enjoying it, is because the gameplay is timeless. You can continue making those forever if the level designs are creative and unfold naturally.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, and I always liked the kind of pinball aspect and kind of Rube Goldberg contraption feel.
Well, I want a sequel to Spinball so bad.
Yeah. I mean, it's a shame that Sonic, or it was a Sega Institute, kind of disbanded.
Yeah.
But I think, and there was Sonic Pinball Party years later on Game Boy Advance, but there's nothing that quite had the feel of the original Sonic Spinball. And
because it is just a Sonic game that happens to be in a pinball machine. I thought one of the smartest things about that game is that you start out like it's a normal Sonic game, and you can do a Sonic spin and shoot off, and then now you're not platforming anymore because Robotnik went with this weird layout this time.
Oh yeah, and the fact that they brought in characters from the animated show, I thought that was pretty neat too.
Yeah, I forgot about that. But yeah, alternatively, if they have to do more remixes, could we please go back to Marble Zone just once? Because I love it. Yeah. I love it so much, and it's my favorite musical theme, and we never go back and remix that, and I don't know why.
Yeah, that is a great one. I mean, it's definitely influenced by anything Altered Beast. We used to use Daniel Tidwell as one of our. He's the guy that writes or redoes all the music for our intro. We actually used to use the Marble Zone theme for our outro.
I use it for the Comic Vault, which makes no sense because it doesn't have anything to do with comic books, but it just sounds really good with that. So that's what I use. Yeah. Has nothing to do with comic books. The only time that ever fits is if I do something Sonic, which happens every now and again. But
So I have something to blow your mind real quick. So we're talking about Marble Zone, right?
Yeah.
And you know how there's some songs in the Sonic the Hedgehog series that sound like other songs, kind of like this sounds like.
Oh no.
So if you can look up, and maybe you have to look this up for later, but "Music to Watch the Girls Go By" by Andy Williams was a pop song. And it has a very familiar hook. It sounds a lot like the Marble.
Is that going to ruin Marble Zone for me?
I hope not, but you're going to recognize the hook to it for sure.
Oh no, that's crazy. Guys, let's knock out some more of these real quick, if you don't mind. What is a game that you have been itching to finally cover, Genesis wise?
Ooh, I know mine, and I know. Sorry, I'll be quick on this one, and I know Nick is kind of like on the fence with this, just because he's not a huge fan of the genre. Starflight, because I'm a huge nerd for Star Trek, and I love Star Wars also, but Starflight is like the best Star Trek game without a Star Trek.
I didn't know that. I'll have to play that. Aaron, we've got to talk Star Trek at some point. I don't know if you've picked up on this, but Star Trek is my first love.
Yeah, I absolutely. DS9 is my favorite series.
Yeah, sure.
But I love Next Generation is probably my second, and then the original show, and then you got Voyager and everything else is what I'll say.
Everything else.
Just rank it all the same. But yeah, with Starflight, what makes it so great to me is just the sense of adventure. It was basically. You could go to any planet and you run into space pirates and you have conversations with aliens and you kind of piece together what's happening in the world. But the story isn't kind of thrown at you. You piece it together by finding clues on alien planets, and you mine the planet's resources and you get better ships. And this sounds a lot like No Man's Sky.
Yeah.
But it kind of execute things a lot better than that game.
25 years earlier.
Yes, because the original Starflight came out in 85 or 86.
Oh, even older than that then. Wow.
But they ported on the Sega Genesis, did some quality of life improvements, made it a little bit easier to play, and the game came with like a little novella and a giant map, a star map. And I just get lost in that game, and I can't wait till we cover it.
Yeah, I haven't hardly touched that game. You keep trying to talk me into it.
I'm gonna walk him through it, and
you need to hold my hands.
Nick, is there not enough action in that game? Is there not enough punching? Is that
just I and like I think I mentioned earlier in the show, is like I like games for the Genesis I can pop in and just immediately get in and play.
See, that's me most of the time.
Yeah,
you have to build a party. You build a party, and you have to assign races, and this race is better at this thing. And once you get past that, and you get your ship outfitted, then it's go time, and it's pretty solid from that point on.
I mean, I loved No Man's Sky until I realized 2 hours in, this is all I was going to be doing.
I had the same problem where it was like, this is all I'm doing. And they've made improvements to it. But yeah, I think Starflight kind of gives you the more solid experience all the way through.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm going to have to try that, man.
Like, it's kind of everything that you want as far as the eye can see, but then the gameplay is skin deep.
Yeah. Nick, what's yours?
Yeah.
And this kind of goes back to, we were going to cover this before one of our hiatus happened with Rob, but it's definitely Comic Zone. I've been wanting to cover that game for a long time. It's one of those games that I always kind of keep at the top of my Genesis list. Anytime I go and play, just binge on the Genesis for a weekend, I throw in Comic Zone. I love the character. I love the fighting system in it. I love the levels. Love the idea of it. I mean, there's just, the music's great. Everything about that game is just wonderful. can't wait to cover it. We were actually going to cover that for episode 10, I think. And then Rob and I kind of took another break, so it never happened. But again, we kind of want to save some of these games that I really enjoy, and I know Aaron enjoys, kind of for later on in the podcast. So we're not hitting all these big hitters in the beginning.
Comic Zone should have gotten a cartoon show. I think that could be really cool. Yeah,
and it came out at a very unfortunate time, which is 1995. And so Sega was in that really rough transition period. So people were already coming off the Sega Genesis and transitioning over to other systems.
And like Shenmue, it's got like this love-hate thing going on. Like some people hate that game, some people love it. I don't think there's a lot of in between with that. And unfortunately, I'm in the boat where I love Shenmue and I love Comic Zone. So I always kind of consider those two kind of hand in hand with the way it was received into the public.
And
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, a real quick thing. The composer for that soundtrack worked on Sonic 3. But he handled this one. Howard Drawson did an amazing job on Comic Zone, and the music sounds just like what you imagine grunge music to sound like, but transferred to the Sega Genesis. And he went and released an album called Sega Tunes, which was a little 6-track album you could pick up that you can listen to on YouTube now. And it's a full band arrangement of songs from Comic Zone, and it sounds like Nirvana and Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam and you'd think that it was one of those bands performing, and it's great.
Should have said Soundgarden too. So.
Yeah, Soundgarden a bit.
Sorry.
That's really neat. I'll definitely check that out. Me being who I am, I must ask you guys, what is the best superhero game on the Genesis?
Ooh, you go first, Nick.
So let me ask this first. Do you consider Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles superheroes?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so Hyperstone Heist.
In Europe.
Hyperstone Heist, yeah, sure.
They're the Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's funny. I actually found that out because the very first time I went through emulation, I downloaded Turtles in Time on the Super Nintendo, and I popped that thing up. I'm like, what in the world is Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles?
Yeah, it was in Europe because they couldn't call them ninjas because it was too violent.
Exactly. So I didn't know that, so I started emulating ROMs many years ago. But yeah, that game's awesome. A lot of people don't think Hyperstone Heist is as good as Turtles in Time. Maybe Turtles in Time has a few little extra.
It has an edge with like having the Mode 7.
Mode 7 thrown at the screen.
Throwing enemies at the screen, but the Genesis version lets you pick color palettes.
Exactly.
I remember that.
My youngest son and I, my son Elliot, he's 5. He loves playing that game with me. So he always picks Donatello. I pick Raphael, and we play that game we'll play it for hours, and we do it like once a week. Every Saturday I'm off work. He'll good day, let's play Turtles. Like, all right, man. So we'll pop it in. We'll play that. So it's kind of, not only is it one of my favorite games to play by myself, it's just fun to play 2-player with my son as well.
Guys, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Yeah. So you guys just put out a new episode just a few hours ago. Really cool the timing of this, considering that you guys are averaging about once a month right now. And you guys just did Ghouls and Ghosts.
Yeah.
Which I've not had a chance to listen to yet. And so that's a sequel to Ghosts and Goblins, yeah?
Yes, it's kind of a 3-part series. Ghosts and Goblins, Ghouls and Ghosts, and then Super Ghouls and Ghosts on the Super Nintendo.
Cool. So everybody go check that out. And if you like these guys and you like listening to them, make sure to go on their Patreon and pledge there. It's absolutely worth it for whatever you want to pledge. You can listen to $1 or $100, however much you want to pledge. You can listen to these guys talk about other games that are not just Genesis titles. And Rob's come back once or twice there, which is really cool. I hope at some point he's able to come back full time. I know he said that he's not probably going to be able to do that, but I miss Rob, and I'd love to chat with him at some point if he ever has the time. But he's a neat guy. And anyway, thank you guys so much for doing this and chatting with me about Sega stuff. And I hope everybody here will go check out the podcast. It's real laid back. It's real loose, but you'll learn a lot. And Aaron is just fountain of information. I don't know how to talk to Aaron because I'm like, I'm going to say that and I'm going to be wrong.
I'm not right 100% of the time. So whatever. I just want to, I guess I can speak for both of us. We've had a great time on the show, and just Thank you so much for having us here. And
yeah, of course. This is so much fun. I mean, I had more stuff. We could have gone another hour. We got to wrap this up at some point. So I think now is probably the time. But anyway, thanks a lot for folks that were here live and asking questions. And if you watched after the fact, we sure appreciate that as well. Go check these guys out and let them know that you came from here. And in the meantime, already got a couple of folks, David and Jeffrey, saying that they're going to go follow you guys, check you out.
Awesome.
So, thanks a lot for watching, everybody. We sure appreciate it. I will see you again with lots more stuff coming here on Geekvolution of the week. We just got the new omnibus out today, so another 6 hours of that show. So enjoy that. You're welcome. And we've got we're going to be finishing Batmania throughout the week. Thursday will be the last day of that, and we're going to be watching the new Batman movie, Gotham by Gaslight, and we're going to be watching that cold. So that'll be the last one. And then Friday is the first episode of the sequel to Spawn Year, Batcat, the 48th Halloween. I cannot wait to show it to you guys. That comes up on Friday. Look forward to that. And in the meantime, I was Captain Logan, and this is Nick Stevens.
Catch you later.
And Aaron Hickman.
Yes, sir.
And once again, I was Captain Logan saying good night. Good night.
Hi, guys.